Hi everyone, my name is Sean, and today we're going to learn the 1 to 5 player game Citrus, designed by me and published by Tress Games, who helped sponsor this video. As leaders of a band of cyberpunk rebels, you're trying to survive the sprawling undercity of Citrus. Above you floats the seemingly inaccessible citadel of Stratus, home of the ruling elites. You're trying to hatch a plan to send your crews up its waste tubes into Stratus to take control in a full-scale rebellion. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, first, in the middle of the table, place one randomly selected minimap tile per player in the pattern shown. This is known as the minimap. Second, place the 4 faction intel boards around the minimap, with either the 1 to 3 player side or 4 plus player side face up, depending on the number of people playing. Third, divide the faction district cards into their 4 decks, based on the back of the card. Shuffle each deck and place it face down on its matching faction district board. Fourth, construct the Stratus floating city model and place it above the minimap. Fifth, place the Citrus district board below Stratus, sliding it into the front leg. Randomly select which side to place face up. 6. Sort the Enforcer bounty cards based on the number of players, returning any not matching the player count to the box. Stack the cards face up on their matching spaces below the Citrus district board. 4 plus player cards are at the bottom if playing with 4 or more players. 7. Shuffle the Stratolite cards and place them in a face-down deck to the left of Citrus district board. Then draw and place 5 of them face up onto Stratus. 8. Place 7 tube sections per player near Stratus. Place the remaining tube section out of reach. These may be used at the end of the game. 9. Randomly deal each player a rebel board. They may choose which side to use and play face up. Give each player the rebel leader and 3 transport standees and 12 crew tokens that match their rebel board. 10. Give each player a resource tracker board and resource tracker token for each of the 4 resource types. Place all 4 of your resource tokens on the value 2 space, and your leader and transport standees in their matching spaces on the tracker board. And lastly, the first player who most recently watched a cyberpunk film is the first player. Give them the first player marker. And that's the setup. In Citrus, players try to gain prestige by ascending crews to Stratus or by gaining control of the waste tubes on Citrus as part of the rebellion. The game is played over approximately 5 rounds, each with 4 phases. Phases 1 and 4 are performed simultaneously, while phases 2 and 3 are performed in turn order. In the first phase, all players start with income, where you'll gain resources indicated on your Corporocrat life path on your rebel board. Note, you only gain tech, ammo, or glow in this life path, represented by the symbols shown. You may add more Corporocrat mission cards in later turns to add more symbols, allowing you to gain more resources during this phase. To gain a resource, simply move the resource tracker up the resource track. In this case, you will gain 1 tech. Once all players have gained resources this way, phase 1 is over, and we move to phase 2. In phase 2, players take turns starting with the first player and going clockwise around the table. On your turn, you'll scout a district with your rebel leader to gain resources. Your leaders are placed onto the scouting spot in one of 4 districts: the Corporocrats, the Privateers, the Rovers, or the Hooligans. Once your leader is placed, you gain the resource represented by the symbol shown. You may not visit a scouting spot containing another rebel leader. Instead, you can take an adjacent scouting spot or visit another district. Note that if the adjacent scouting spot is also taken, that district is unavailable. Once placed, the symbols show the type and amount of resource you'll gain, and this amount increases for every crew you currently have on Stratus. So, if you have 0 crews on Stratus, you gain 6 credits. In an example where there is 3 crews on Stratus, you will instead gain 9 credits. Also, whenever you place your leader into a district, all other players gain resources indicated on their privateer life path. Note, You do not gain additional resources from your privateer life path when you scout, only when others do. More than one player can trigger the same privateer life path for you if you have the symbols shown. You may add more privateer mission cards later to add more symbols, allowing you to gain more resources this phase. Once all players have scouted, Phase 2 ends and we move to Phase 3. Phase 3A, Travel, begins with players taking turns starting with the first player and going clockwise. Move one of your transports to one of the 9 landing pads across Citrus or Stratus. Once placed, you must perform the action shown. The 4 faction district landing pads require paying resources to claim an intel card, which you add to the matching life path on your rebel board. Then immediately send a crew to an empty hex on the minimap matching the district color. If you place a crew adjacent to rival crews, you may choose one rival to spy on, gaining 1 resource from each of their adjacent hexes. Note, you only choose one rival, so you might gain either 1 glow and 1 tech, or 2 ammo, for example. After completing this, refill the intel card. Now, let's replay the faction district action again, this time focusing on the Hooligan life path. Moving to the Corporocrat landing pad normally costs 3 credits, but the Hooligan life path gives a 1 credit discount as shown, so you pay only 2 credits. You may add more Hooligan mission cards later for more discounts. If discounts exceed the cost, pay nothing. You don't gain extra resources. These discounts also apply to waste tube payments via Stratus or Renegade landing pads. At the Stratus landing pad, requirements are determined by the Stratus level and Stratolite card. The Stratus level sets the resource amount. Level 1, 5. Level 2, 11. And level 3, costing you 18 resources. While the Stratolite card dictates the resource type and the required crew placement on the hex. To ascend a crew, you must have a crew on the correct hex and pay the required resource type. For example, with 11 tech and a crew on a privateer hex matching the Stratolite, you could ascend to level 1 or 2, though level 2 gives you more prestige. After placing your crew on Stratus, immediately place waste tube matching the ascendant level on the previously occupied hex. If allocated waste tubes runs out, use the set aside tubes. This triggers the endgame after this round. There's another landing pad in the Citrus district called the Renegade, where you can ascend crews to Stratus. You still pay the same resource amounts per level, but you don't need a specific resource type or crew placement, making it easier. However, ascending through Stratolites gives an extra transport action in Phase 3B, unlike the Renegade. Now to the Citrus district's other landing pads. Landing on the Enforcer lets you claim a bounty card. You may choose to send 1 crew to a hex shown on the bounty, spying as usual but not collecting intel. Or pay 5 resource shown to move 1 crew on Stratus 1 level higher. Landing on the Fixer lets you take any available intel card for 0 cost and add it to your matching life path without placing a crew. Then, reserve the top Stratolite card beside your resource tracker and take the first player marker for the next phase. Landing on the Merchant lets you make up to 2 separate trades. Trades for ammo, credits, or tech must follow the arrow directions on the market display. For example, trade 1 ammo for 1 credit, not vice versa. Glow may be traded for ammo, credit, or tech, but you may never trade for glow. You start with a 1-to-1 trade ratio, but rover intel in your rover life path increases ratios for specific resources. With 4 credit symbols, trading for credits gives 4 credits instead of 1. For example, trade 2 glow for 8 credits, then trade 8 credits for 8 tech. After choosing a landing pad and performing the action, the next player places their first transport. There is no limit to how many transport can visit a landing pad. This continues until all players have placed their 3 transports. If any transport is on Stratus after all placements, proceed to Phase 3B, Extra Travel. Since non-Stratolites aren't welcome overnight, players, in turn order, starting with first player, must move their transports from Stratus to any other landing pad except meet a Stratolite, performing that action. Once no transport remains on Stratus, move to Phase 4. Before Phase 4, check if the final allocated waste tube remain. If none remain, proceed to final scoring after Phase 3B. Otherwise, continue to Phase 4. In Phase 4, discard the rightmost Stratolite. Slide remaining Stratolites right and add a new Stratolite from the deck to the leftmost space. All players return their 3 transports and rebel leaders to their resource tracker boards. We then begin the new round, repeating phases 1 to 4. Now, let's proceed to endgame scoring. First, gain prestige per crew on Stratus based on their numbers and levels. Next, Stratus rewards go to players with absolute or tied majority of crews on each Stratus level, based on the level's conditions. Then check waste tube control. For each tube, the player with majority of crews across all adjacent hexes controls it. Place control tubes before you for scoring. If tied, no one scores it. Finally, gain prestige from bounty cards for every matching faction intel card acquired. Add all points together and the player with the most wins. In a case of a tie, the tied players rule Stratus and Citrus together. And that is everything you need to know to play Citrus. Now, there are also rules and components for playing solo, but I'll leave those for another video, so be sure to stay subscribed. Otherwise, if you have any questions about anything else you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get the chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.